Hi, developer Ezra here. I'm an indie game developer working on a retro point and click inspired RPG game. Now that I've begun to solidify the game design and the feel of the game, the next goal for me is to begin coding the core functionality of the game and start creating some of the assets and image that I'm going to use for the game.
In my excitement, I made the most fundamental mistake in indie game development. Everybody will tell you that first game you're working on, you should start small. I didn't do that. The truth is that this feels like one of the last chance I'll ever have, and I'm pretty sure that's not true. I can't help feeling that way, so I really want to achieve big things during this time, at least personally.
But there's no time to sulk about. It is time for action. Hopefully enough to keep me in the execution mode, keeping me away from the worry about the uncertain future and get nothing done in the process mode. You know what I'm talking about. So the first thing I'm doing is to draw up the full gameplay screen with UI to see if and how everything would fit together. I could just work on each of the portion as I get to them, but do you remember when you were younger and you were trying to write your name in big letters on a piece of paper and you enthusiastically start writing your name in big block letters and towards the end you realize, oh, I underestimated how much space I need, so you end up squishing all the letters together. Well, I want to avoid doing that for my game, so mocking out and seeing the big picture would really help fine-tune that placement of everything. Like where the dialogue should go and where would the UI be least distracting, and is the scene too big or too small, that kind of stuff. Although it took a good amount of time to finish this drawing process, especially since as someone who just enjoys drawing, I got a bit too carried away with detailing. After all was finished, it was satisfying to look at. Although it's non-functioning mock-up still, it feels good seeing my game take more concrete shape. And honestly, I need the boost of motivation that comes from this. And finally, it's time to code. Basically, I need to create a scene with selectable objects, and each object would have associated actions. If I can get that done today, I will feel pretty good. First, I implemented a selection system so I can easily add items to a scene and define the display name and the type of actions available for each object without messing with the main game logic. Also, I needed a way to clearly show what was being selected, so I learned to code a shader for the first time, which by the way was pretty fun. It was scary at first, but once I got used to it, it was pretty simple. One slight complication was that the shader applies its logic at a sub-pixel size, so I had to make some rounding logic to make sure the outline also looked pixelated, rather than just a thin, smooth line around the character. And as a final touch, I added a pulsing color to the line for additional clarity and aesthetics. And so here's what it looks like all put together. I can select between available objects with the left and the right control like this. And you can see the available actions along with its display name on the screen here. I played around with it for a bit to find any obvious problem like wrapping around the selection or going back and forth quickly, and it looked pretty good. It was working well. And tomorrow I can work on the dialogue system. Well, it didn't start too early, but I still needed my coffee. I love my daily iced Americano, and I have to go out and get it to start the day right. I could brew my own, and that would be cheaper, but I just love the walk to and from the cafe first thing in the morning. And, interacting with the baristas and just being surrounded by the hustle and bustle of the people is also a big part of the experience, I think. I don't know if I'm alone in this. Let me know what you think. But anyways, today's task is the dialogue system, which is a follow-up to yesterday's object selection system. Once the player selects an action, a dialogue should start. And during the dialogue, I should be able to make choices that would branch the dialogue. Now, something I did not originally anticipate is the sudden urge to put a character portrait along with the dialogue. And not only that, I want the portrait to be animated. I just thought this type of nuanced detail brings that artisanal, I don't know if that's the right word, or somewhat modern indie game feel to an otherwise completely retro look and feel so far. And look, it feels pretty good, right? Doesn't it look more lively? I think it really helps with increasing the immersion for a low res 2D game like this. And immediately I could imagine adding a bunch more other types of expressions and animation to make it even feel better. But that's for later. Now, looking at it right now here, I kind of want the mouth to be animated as well so that it looks like the character is talking as the text is being revealed. Obviously, it's not priority, but I think that'll really add a good dimension to the experience. So here's how you write the dialogue. Each entity has an interaction controller that has the individual interaction script attached. In it, I can define text and when to display portrait as well, and finally define choices and where those choices branch to. So I can do some branch control here too. Now, obviously, there's a lot more improvement and functionality I could add to this, but for now, this is good enough to get me started on writing the content, which is a big part of my game right now. Now, I've written a more user-friendly, more versatile dialogue writing system before in my life, but trying to do that here right now might just be adding unnecessary complexity that I would need to debug way too much. I can deal with it being a little bit clunky and technical. Now, a lot of the basic functionalities and core features are kind of dealt with, so it's time for writing some content. And I got to thinking about potential storyline that would highlight the core mechanic and experience I wanted to show in my game. Branching narrative is notorious for being very manually intensive. You could just imagine as soon as you start to branch the choices and then the choices branch into further choices, it just becomes unmanageably large. And obviously there are some tricks where story would branch and come together, branch and come together. So you just kind of contain and retain the storyline into manageable pieces. Also, there's some state-based branching that people use sometimes so that, you individually manage the dialogue without thinking about the flow. But personally, I kind of want to write as much as I can. I think the content is king here because from my experience, all these tricks work out. But at the end of the day, the feeling of discovering those like branches that somebody wrote specifically for my experience, that unique experience, nothing really beats that. It's one advantage I have being an indie developer. Well, it's advantage and disadvantage. One advantage I have as a indie developer is that I don't have a management breathing down on my neck saying, come up with a more efficient way to, scale this thing. But at the same time, because I'm a single person, writing all those things become even more difficult, but I still want to do it. So maybe I'll think about it down the road. But for now, I'm going to go for writing every single branch as much as I can for that unique experience. But it is overwhelming nonetheless. So like any responsible developer would, I went on to procrastinate by working on something else. So I got to polishing some other pieces. I looked at the UI and you can see this like empty notebook UI here. I thought it would be nice to have some sort of investigation note here. And, also this would be a good placement for the flashback mechanic for managing player characters' memory. So I just put down some non-functioning image of what that would look like. And then of course I added an unnecessary amount of polish by adding a flip page animation. Now I do realize I'm doing a lot of preliminary polishing, which might be adding not as much value as if I were to do something else. But as I said before, that extra push to motivation and getting my creative juice keep flowing is kind of nice. There's something oddly hopeful about catching a glimpse of a potential future. And now at this point, I was about ready to close out my day. Then I had an idea. So I was thinking, well, I want to highlight the flashback mechanics. So the kind of decisions in the middle of the story to revisit the past of the, player's character and that impacting the current interaction. And maybe I could just make the entire game set in place, well, entire game of the demo set in place in this one location called Quest and Beyond with this one character in it, and I'll just fill it up with bunch of interactable objects where depending on where in the past you're revisiting, the interaction changes. Some of the context gets revealed, some of the relationship with the store clerk gets revealed, and the end of the demo will be where you find out why you're there. And I think that's a very interesting idea, and I think that could be a convincing kind of little experience to show off the whole, well, this is not just another point and click. This is where you actually need to revisit your character's background in different places at your own free will as a player to reveal different pieces of the current situation in order to make up a story. Coincidentally, in the morning of next day, I ran across a video by Daryl Talks Games titled Outer Wilds is Not a Game. It's a well done video, so you should check it out. Now, I've heard of this game before, but never played it or looked into it, like what kind of gameplay it has. But basically, I found out that Outer Wilds gameplay is one that is less directed, and the ability given to the player doesn't change throughout the game. So the progression is made by players discovering the lore and information through exploration. And that exploration is set up in a way that it's driven by the player's own choosing. Basically, it operates on players' intrinsic motivation. Now, this design resonates deeply with me. This is the kind of experience I was thinking about when I had that idea of keeping the experience in this single scene and just having a lot of interactable objects with unguided exploration of the backstory, so the players would be able to discover different things about their character or choose to discover different things about the character, and makes the experience deeply personal. So obviously I had to experience it myself because, it's a research, and I fell into it pretty hard. The thing is, I haven't been able to fully immerse and enjoy video games in a while. A lot of the titles I played recently felt like chores, and it was actually frustrating that I couldn't enjoy playing game. And it might be due to some of the stress that's surrounding me and the pressure, and otherwise, pressure of being more productive. But Outer Wilds did that for me. I was able to immediately fully immerse myself and just enjoy exploring that world and discovering hidden truths that are in this game. And at the end of the day, it took me 3 days to finish the game, and I don't feel that the time was wasted. This was a good research, but also I was finally able to kind of unwind in the immersion of the game. And yeah, that is my progress so far. I feel pretty good about how much of the core features were done and how it's looking so far. And I'm hoping by the next update, I'll have a good amount of content written along with actual implementation for the flashback mechanic. Well, thanks for hanging. If you enjoyed the video, or if you have any questions or any statement at all, please leave it down in the comments below. I love reading them. I love responding to them. Yeah, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.